Hello everyone, my name is Alida. I hold a master level degree in linguistics and I've been preparing students for IELTS for more than 10 years. And in this video, we will cover verbs, expressions and nouns to express your opinion. It is very important on IELTS, on PT, academic, PT, core, TOEFL or any other language test or language exam. If we are talking about IELTS, you will mainly use these expressions in the third part of the speaking section when you get questions asking for your opinion, and of course on the writing part of the exam in the second task when you are expected to write an essay and are expected to express your opinion. However, you can also use these verbs, expressions, and nouns in the first task. Yes, in the first task, you should not express your personal opinion about the data that you are given. The same goes for PT academic when you are asked to describe a graph on the speaking section. However, sometimes the data that you are given shows the results of an opinion poll or the results of a survey. In other words, it shows the opinion of survey respondents. And then, of course, you do need to use the verbs, nouns, and expressions to express an opinion of those survey respondents. Therefore, these expressions are also useful even for the first task of the writing section. So let's start. And the first verb that we will take is to justify. To justify something is to show that it is reasonable. For example, I can say, placing an elderly person in a retirement home can be justified. It can be reasonable in certain circumstances. Or there is significant debate among politicians about whether the use of taxation on junk food can be justified. Let me also give you one more example how you can use it in the first task on IELTS. For example, if you have a graph showing the results of an opinion poll, then you can say the graph or the opinion poll, the results of the survey show that a quarter of survey respondents believe that a junk food tax can be justified. Now let's take another verb, to advocate. To advocate means to recommend something publicly, and the opposite of to advocate is to object to something. If you object to something, you express your dislike or your disapproval of it. For example, I can say, while some people advocate a junk food tax or a taxation on junk food, hoping that it would help to decrease obesity rate, others object to the idea or the others object to such a measure. Similarly, I can say, while some politicians advocate the use of violence to protect human rights, others object to the use of force, believing that it inevitably leads to a loss of innocent lives, for example. So to advocate, and the opposite is to object to something. The next verb we will take is to acknowledge. If you acknowledge a situation, or if you acknowledge a fact, you accept or you admit that it is true. For example, I can say that while there are benefits to sending elderly parents to a retirement homes, it is important to acknowledge, to admit, right? It is important to acknowledge that a vast majority of senior citizens would prefer to spend their retirement in their own homes, right? So to acknowledge, right? You can also say to make a compelling argument for, right? It is important to make a compelling argument, right? Or it is important to be able to make a compelling argument. If you make a compelling argument, you convince somebody. So compelling means convincing. So once you present a compelling argument, the person who listens to you now will see your point and will see that your argument is reasonable. And so to make a compelling argument, so they can make a compelling argument for the use of taxes to decrease the consumption of junk food, for example. Now we have to acknowledge, to justify, to advocate, to object to something, and to make a compelling argument for something. Usually when I give my students a list of expressions or a list of verbs, nouns, you name it, they get confused and they ask me, okay, how can we use it on the exam? It's just a list of random expressions. Okay, I can make a sentence, but I can't make an introduction. I can't make a coherent piece of writing just with these expressions. So let me show you how you can make an introduction, how we can make an introduction using these 5 expressions that we have just covered. So let's start with the introduction. If you remember, in the introduction we usually give some background information, then we have to present one side of the debate, the other side of the debate, and state our opinion. Of course, that's not always the case because your introduction depends on the task that you are given on IELTS, but if it's an opinion essay, that's usually the case. For example, if the question is, to what extent do you agree or disagree, or discuss both views and express your own opinion, that would be the case. So let's start with the first sentence. I can say, for example, there has been considerable debate about whether the use of taxes or whether taxation on junk food can be justified. While some advocate a junk food tax, believing that it can make unhealthy products less attractive, others object to the idea, or others object to such a measure. While it has to be acknowledged that there are compelling arguments on both sides, I suggest that a junk food tax alone is unlikely to change consumer behavior and affect obesity rates. Now, we have used all the expressions that we have covered, and I've also included one more verb, to suggest. If you suggest an idea, you propose this idea. So I suggest, I offer this idea to you, right? Now let's try to see how easily you can modify this and change it pretty much into any topic. If in the previous examples I've mentioned one of the topics is the use of violence to protect human rights. So let's change this introduction that we have just made with our expressions to tailor it to another topic. For example, the use of violence to protect human rights. So there have been considerable debate about whether the use of violence to protect human rights can be justified. Some advocate the use of arms, while others, here as you wish, however, others object to it, claiming that use of force inevitably leads to a loss of innocent lives. And then again, while it has to be acknowledged that there are compelling arguments on both sides, I would suggest that several courses of action or different courses of action should be considered when it can be proven that human rights are under threat. So as you can see, you can easily use these verbs and expressions to make an introduction to any essay. Just be sure that every sentence that you construct contains specific vocabulary related to your topic. The reason why it is important is that on IELTS there is a penalty for memorized sentences. Memorized sentences are the sentences which you can prepare at home and just include in any essay. Such sentences do not contain any words related to the topic that you are given on the exam, which means that you can remember phrases, you can remember these chunks, and it's essential to remember these chunks because they make it easier for you to write your essay. They make your speech fluent. Language chunks are essential, but memorize chunks, not sentences, and prepare for your exam chunks. Prepare chunks, not canned sentences. To assert. If you assert something, you state it firmly. For example, some people assert that poverty is the most urgent problem that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. To dispute. If you dispute a fact or a statement, you claim that it's not correct or that it's not true. For example, I can say, regardless of what you may think about the risks of the use of artificial intelligence, no one can dispute that it is here to stay. Or no one disputes that parenting is hard. Or these claims are hotly disputed by scientists. To question. If you question something, you express your concerns or you express your doubts about whether it is reasonable, whether it is worthwhile. For example, I can say, while some people advocate a fast food tax in an effort to decrease obesity rates, others question the efficiency of such an approach and its ability to change or modify consumer behavior. To imply. If you imply that something is the case, then you say something which indicates that this is the case, but in an indirect way. For example, I can say such a suggestion implies a lack of understanding of the root causes of the issue. To imply. Now let's move on to nouns. A debate is a very frequent word that we use to express our opinion or to make an introduction in an opinion answer. For example, I can say there has been some debate over whether tuition fees should be increased. Benefits are the same as advantages, and drawbacks is another synonym for disadvantages. For example, there is little objective information about the benefits and drawbacks of telemedicine. Evidence is another very good noun, and evidence means anything that you read or experience or hear that convinces you that something is true. For example, I can say there is some evidence or there is a lot of evidence that stress can undermine your health. Now, let's see how well you have remembered the nouns. And let's do a very quick exercise in which you will need to match some nouns with their synonyms. Match the words in white boxes with their synonyms in green boxes. Pause the video if you need more time, and the correct answer is a benefit, is an advantage, a debate is a discussion, a drawback is a disadvantage, and proof is evidence. Now try to make your own sentences using the nouns, verbs, and expressions that we have covered in this video. Remember that handwriting helps you to memorize new words better. So it does make sense to take this pen, to take a notebook, and to write down your sentences. If you want, you can also leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to read them all. Also, if you are looking for essay correction services, I have a very good colleague of mine who has been preparing students for IELTS for several years, and he offers excellent essay correction services for a very small price. So if you are interested, please check out that link in the description box below, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye, and remember, perseverance is the key to your IELTS success. Bye bye.